Yeah, my grandfather in 1949 had this strange idea that if you could move shows across state lines by truck, you could bring live entertainment beyond the Boston Washington rail corridor, which is where shows had been up till then. And we've been doing it ever since.
The voice you heard at the top was that of Charlie Deull, third generation family behind longtime Broadway show hauler, among other touring acts, Clark Transfer, based in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and today involved in touring work all around the nation, pulled exclusively by owner-operators leased onto the company, in addition to a network of outside agents, including many owner-ops and small fleets too. Deull I spoke to this spring, in some sense, about the company's efforts to bounce back from the big hit the COVID-19 pandemic put on the business. Coming out of it in the last year or so, as big touring acts have returned in earnest, the company's changed up parts of its contractor compensation package in unique ways. Among the very, very few carriers out there offering a minimum guaranteed revenue to owners who lease there, for one, and for two, guaranteeing their fuel surcharge as a backstop for the less fuel efficient among owner-operators there. I'm Todd Dills, your host for this edition of Overdrive Radio for August 5th, 2022, where Charlie Deull is going to walk us through Clark Transfer and its leased owner-operators pandemic story. Likewise, those changes and how they're playing out for both new and established owners there. Most of the conversation you'll hear today occurred in May. I wrote a feature about the company that regular Overdrive readers among you may have seen last month, too. You can find that story at overdriveonline.com, search Clark Transfer. Though most of what's there, you'll also hear in this edition. In the course of researching the story, Deull sent along a contact for owner-operator Jeff Seals, among the company's longest tenured contracting owner-operators at upward of 3 decades. This week, as I planned to revisit my interview with Deull for the podcast audience, I was also on the verge of connecting with owner-operator Seals when I learned that he had passed unexpectedly. It's been a tough week for everyone at Clark Transfer on account of it, as well as the reality that another owner, working with the company since 2018, also passed within days of Seals. His name was Mark Mills. Here's Deull telling parts of his story.
I had seen Mark not that long ago. Mark was most recently the lead driver on Chicago, the music group, as opposed to Chicago, the Broadway tour. He was, just someone loved by the people he worked with. And it was quite a shock to everyone when he passed away suddenly. And in some ways it's not, it's not, he deserves his own time. They each deserve their own time. So I hate that their passings are linked in this respect of having passed away so close to each other.
In the tribute to owner-operator Mark Mills posted earlier this week to Clark Transfer's Facebook page, the company noted he leaves behind his wife, Kelly, and a young daughter, McKenna, among other family. My deepest condolences to them, no doubt. His first run for Clark Transfer in 2018 was hauled between Harrisburg and York, Pennsylvania, the company noted. A relatively short drive that ended up, under difficult circumstances, taking 12 long hours of blizzard battling. But he got there. The show went on. As noted by Charlie Deull, he'd worked on a variety of productions from Fiddler on the Roof to Come From Away, the American Ballet Theater, Dear Evan Hansen, Miss Saigon, The Lion King, Anastasia, Frozen, and others. But he'd been with the band Chicago off and on since 2019. The Chicago crew set up a Give Send Go page to help his family. That's givesendgo.com/morethanlifemark. You can find a link to it too in the show notes or the post that houses this podcast for August 5, 2022 at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. Owner-operator Jeff Seals, as noted, had been leased to Clark Transfer
over 30 years.
Right.
Jeff obviously was known by so many people in the industry, and he had a very special place in all that he did. He was somebody who could get the most complex version of herding cats done without ever having to be unpleasant with
Right.
any of the cats or other handlers. So that's a pretty special gift to be able to manage the complex logistics and complex personalities that you find in doing this for over 30 years, and always treat people the way you would want to be treated yourself.
I was surprised to hear that he had actually been with the kind of the lead man on the Phantom of the Opera tour for 18 years.
18 years. He did all of their moves.
Everything. Yeah.
He supervised. They started out at 28 trucks,
right.
Managing that load in, load out. And he became part of the Phantom family. So when they closed that tour, they invited him not as lead driver, but as an invited guest to their celebration of the 18 years of touring at the W Hotel in Los Angeles, opposite the Pantages. That's the kind of relationship that he had with those people over the 18 years. Jeff's family also had a long relationship with Clark.
Right.
His brother and father both worked with Clark at different times.
Wow. Both owner-operators Mills and Seals, it's certain, will be missed. Condolences again to the families. Okay, on to my spring talk with Deull about what's been happening at Clark Transfer with respect to their owner-operator contracting program since the pandemic threw an existential curveball their way. It's a dramatic story, no doubt, made no less dramatic for the comeback that's ongoing with new commitments to stability of the contracting businesses that truly drive the fleet's business forward. That's all those owner-operators, of course. Here's Deull, looking back pre-pandemic.
At the time of the pandemic, we had 100 we had 100 trucks, and about 20% of them were teams. So we had between 120 and 125 owner operators, no company drivers.
Right.
Our fleet's about, we have about 340 or so trailers that are custom designed for entertainment work. So our customers are very happy when they see our truck and not a different truck pull up, because it's we kind of grew up together with the industry, and what they expect is what we know how to do, and what we know how to do is what they expect. Sure. We grew up together. We just got back a truck from a trailer from a show that it was out with 20 years. That trailer was with that show for 20 years. And they had basically built with load bars and other things inside that truck, something custom designed for what they were using that particular trailer for. Right. So at the beginning, shows develop affection for particular trailers, and that one basically wasn't in Harrisburg for 20 years. It was out on the road with this show. So in March 12th, 2020, in the span of about 36 hours, the Broadway shows around the country unloaded into about 225 of our trailers. and our work stopped and life changed. We're kind of crazy as a company. We treat each load more like a space shuttle launch than a piece of freight.
Right.
So we were in 2018 on time 99.91% of the time, and the 0.09 everybody gets to explain to my 88-year-old mother exactly what could have been done differently to prevent that, so that we can incorporate those lessons and get even better at it.
Right.
Because the shows, there's sometimes 2,000 to 5,000 people waiting that don't get to have a show if the equipment doesn't get there. So we had at that point 100, the 100 trucks are Harrisburg. We have about 20 or 25, between 20 and 25 office people to check and track and make sure that we don't have service failures. Our drivers become part of the show. So we had the same lead driver out with Phantom of the Opera for 18 years, did every move for them for 18 years.
Charlie Deull was speaking in May here. That owner-operator he's speaking about with the Phantom of the Opera tour for so long? Jeff Seals, of course. He was the lead man in the Clark transfer team through it all.
When they closed, they invited him as a guest, not as a driver, but as a guest to their very nice closing party in Los Angeles at a very nice venue. The biggest factor in our success in keeping our promises to our customers, the real key to it, in addition to what the office does, is our drivers are completely dedicated to their customers. So they know the show. Yeah. They are part of, they're working alongside the road crew that's going from place to place, and they don't want to disappoint them. And so they're the ones up in the middle of the night thinking proactively, figuring out what could go wrong. And we've been extraordinarily fortunate to have a great group of people as our owner operators, and they hated doing freight. I know a lot of I know the rest of the world likes freight, or the trucking world likes freight. Our drivers hated doing freight. So all the Broadway work stopped, and we didn't let anybody go. And we basically said we will borrow money and run at a loss, because our overhead, everything is structured for doing the show work. So we paid people who were doing freight as if they were doing show work. And we ran, we lost a bunch of money until show business started up again. But we kept everybody on in our office, even though they didn't have, their normal jobs to do, because Broadway and live entertainment was completely shut down for a year and a half. So we basically, as a family, said we would borrow the money to cover the losses, and we did. But in the process, if you think of a driver pool as having people coming in and people going out, during that time, we were bringing nobody in. We can't recruit for a freight business. And we had no idea when show work would resume. So our historical attrition rate for almost any period you look at is under 20% annual, which for trucking is pretty good. The vast majority of those are of the departures have been health related. People aging out. We believe we pay on the very high end on a net basis for the owner operators.
Right.
We've had a lot of people tell us that, third parties who've looked at it. But the catch, when people hear, what it is, the catch is, while we will always get somebody home when they say they need to be, that can't be every week. That it's so home time is the big disqualifying thing for us. Again,
Right.
If somebody says 2 months from now I need to be, or 10 days from now I need to be at a whatever the reason is, we work and we get them home.
Yep.
But what they can't do, it's not compatible to, they're not going to be home every week, every 2 weeks. That's not how touring shows work. So we couldn't recruit. We lost about half the fleet during that period. When we do our shows, we do a combination of Clark owner operators plus companies we have good relationships with who, under our supervision, will do loads for us. We call them agents. Other people have other terminology, but a bunch of our agents just plain out went out of business.
Wow.
And so when this all started up in the second half of 21, we faced a resurgence with a severely diminished agent pool and a fleet that was half the size. While our attrition was just a little bit higher than that 20% during this, there was nobody coming in.
Yeah.
That's how it wound up half the size. And we for years have believed that the people who make this all happen are our amazing owner operators.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother and my grandfather, so my mother, Norma Deull's father, started the company, but my mother's always had the idea that anybody who works with us should be able to make a really good living and take care of their families and the like.
Right.
So we use that sort of lull to take a look at what we thought was already good, a good program.
Yep.
And we came up with some new stuff.
We'll let Charlie Deull explain all of that and what follows, but the fundamental piece of what they're doing is guaranteeing a 7 working days revenue average for every owner-operator contracting with the company, of $3,500 weekly for a solo owner-op, and $5,000 for a team. It's a fairly conservative guarantee. They know that because for established owners, they haven't had to pay out any extra money to meet it to date. The 7-day working average for every leased contractor is figured up at the end of every quarter. The Clark guarantee is meant to make up for the difference if that average comes in under the $3,500 and $5,000 figures. But as noted, for established owner-operators leased there, that hasn't been the case. Yet since we talked in the spring, Deull and Company made a change to the program for those newly contracting with the company, allowing the weekly guarantee to apply to the first weeks as owners get their footing in the company's system. That's been a welcome addition, Deull said, and one that has, in fact, cost them money. Worth it, though, in the boost it's given to the company's ability to quickly illustrate the lucrative nature of doing business there for owners.
Most owner-operators, singles earn between 175 and 200 plus per year, and that those are gross numbers.
Yeah.
And typically that's on around 75 to 85,000 miles.
Right, low miles, yeah.
Low miles. Most team operations earn 250 to 300 plus, and that's on 95 to 110,000. We found that with owner operators, notwithstanding a program, people sometimes didn't understand what they made, even though we gave them the information. So as an example of that, sometimes people would subtract advances that they got, even though they were taking the advances every week. So if somebody was making $4,000 and taking $2,000 of advances every week, they were receiving $4,000 each week, which was their earnings, but they might start thinking of it that they were making $2,000 because they didn't count the advance or next week's advance. So partly to address that, we started an actual guarantee program.
Yeah. Okay.
And this guarantee, basically at the end of every quarter, we calculate people's average weekly revenue. And if it were less than $3,500 a week for a single or $5,000 a week for a team, we will happily pay them that amount to bring their average up. We have so far not had to pay out on this at all because everybody's made more than that. But we looked up above and trucking companies, so our owner operators come in basically saying they've been lied to at so many places. There seems to be whatever the truth is, there's a common perception among owner operators that they've been lied to by trucking companies generally.
Yeah.
My mother had 3 rules growing up. You tell the truth, you do what you say you're going to do, and you're never late. I'm very good on the first 2. I'm pretty good on the 3rd. But so when people see these averages, a way of saying we really mean them is to say we will actually guarantee it.
When it comes to leased arrangements around the nation for owner-operators, this kind of minimum guaranteed revenue backstop is quite rare, as I illustrate in my story about the program this past month. Just 5 in every 100 leased owners, that's 5%, who took Overdrive's last compensation survey indicated any kind of minimum guarantee structure in their lease contract. And that's not the entirety of the changes Clark's made as their businesses ramped back up with Broadway and other touring acts over the last year. Deull and Company are also guaranteeing a maximum fuel cost fleet-wide of $1.60 a gallon. This change, Deull noted, is in fact costing the company money.
We tell people when they come through orientation, if there's any single thing that somebody tells you that turns out not to be true, you call us because we want to know about it.
Right.
We feel like we're not perfect, but we're a good enough fit for the people for whom we're a fit that we just want to say what's true. And if people then love us, then that's great. If that's not for them, there's plenty of other places to be. So anyway, so this was a way of just really kind of putting our money where our mouth is. And we've always had a great fuel surcharge, but we also had a misunderstood fuel surcharge because when prices go up, people think they're making less money. But our fuel surcharge was set up to protect people against fuel increases.
Yep.
I'll tell you about what's new and what's old. So basically, the way our fuel surcharge works is we pay it on all miles, empty, bobtail, whether or not we're getting paid for the mile. If the driver's doing it at our request, we pay him a fuel surcharge. It's a formula that's fixed based on a truck getting 6 miles a gallon.
Okay.
So, and it's designed to fix that price at about $1.40 a gallon, regardless of the price for a truck getting 6 miles a gallon. The way it works is that if for most of the fleet that gets better than 6 miles per gallon, the higher fuel goes up, the lower their price is after fuel surcharge. So at 8.2 miles per gallon, a person actually has free fuel, the way that works. And we have a couple people who are at that number and better. So we have one one person who gets 8.4 miles per gallon, and they're actually making money on each gallon of fuel.
Sure.
In terms of the fuel surcharge. But the thinking out there is, oh, fuel prices are higher, I must be making less money, even though that wasn't true for our drivers, because again, all miles were covered. So we just added a guarantee on this, which guarantees that no matter how bad your mileage is, your average net fuel price won't be more than $1.60.
Right.
And I haven't heard of anybody doing this. Was just a weird idea. And so for all of the people in our fleet averaging 6 or more, this guarantee doesn't actually affect them, because they were already paying less than that. Although the place where it affects it is a lot of them now know that they're not paying more than that, where they didn't know it before, but they know it now. Because but we have some people with older trucks, or
could it be operationally that they're not running a lot of highway miles, maybe, and they're getting
the people who are getting less, mostly it's about their truck and maybe how heavy their foot is, or it's all the things that there's
stuff,
100 articles on and the most important piece of equipment, though not equipment, for getting fuel mileage is driver behavior. So and these are owner operators, so and some of them just fundamentally would rather drive faster and have more free time at the other end than have the extra dollars of going slower on that road. Sure. And it's their business, so that they can decide. Well, now for those people who are, most of whom that small group is mostly between 5 and 6 miles a gallon. We're basically saying we'll do the math at the end of the quarter, and we'll make sure that you're unlike the guarantee above, this one we will end up paying some to. This will cost us some money, because we'll end up paying something to the low fuel efficiency folks.
Sure.
I'm not concerned about it from an equity standpoint, because the people who have who have better fuel economy, they're getting more money for that. So there's plenty of incentives for them to still, if they want more money, to drive the way that makes more money for them. That's their choice.
Deull was speaking there in May, as noted at the top, and also detailed company-wide bonuses put in place for leased owners for 2022. You can find more detail in the feature I wrote about the company last month. Search Clark Transfer at overdriveonline.com to find it. When Deull and I spoke this week on the tragic occasion of owner-operators Jeff Seals and Mark Mills' passing, I also asked him how the rebuild was going at the company in light of the changes put in place there in the leasing program. His final thoughts.
The recruiting is going very well. We have more people starting this month, scheduled for next month. So this package of innovation seems to be pretty well received. Mm-hmm. We just calculated our fuel price guarantee payments for last quarter, and as you would expect with high fuel prices, we're making some payments to a good portion of the fleet. A minority, because most people already are well taken care of, but we are going to be able to keep to the promise that nobody averages more than $1.60 a gallon for their fuel during this period. And the workflow from our customers is intense, and the more Clark drivers we have, the better service the customers get, because the owner operators who choose to work with Clark are just the best, and they deliver a level of service that we can't achieve otherwise. So,
Right.
And we've also experienced improvement with the companies we're working with as agents, as they're getting more used to working with us, since we work differently than other companies. And so it's
You probably had to rely on some outside companies a little more than in the past, or at least pre-pandemic, because of so much of the fleet was kind of cut down a little bit during COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, the companies that regularly worked with us pre-pandemic we lost about 90% of our companies that we used, or at least 90% of the owner operators. So we had to basically less than a year ago start recreating the agent,
all those networks. Yeah, wow.
And in recreating the agent pool, we started out, I would hate to call it desperate, but we were fundamentally trying to get somebody to cover loads under our supervision. And over time, we've been able to figure out who are the best of the new ones we found for doing this kind of work,
Right.
and sort of weed out and hone down to a better group than we started with when we first began rebuilding the business. It's been quite a process for us. Now that our fleet size is on the uptick again, that also helps with this, because there are more Clark drivers on shows than there were 6 months ago.
Yep.
And having a critical mass of Clark drivers on a show helps set the example also for the agents we work with. So everybody's getting better as our fleet is rebounding, and as we're sorting out who works best on this sort of thing.
Here's a big thanks for Charlie Deull for his time. And again, you can find a link to the Give Send Go fundraiser for Mark Mills' family in the show notes, or the post that houses this podcast for August 5th, 2022 at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio. Condolences again to both Mills and Jeff Seals' families. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker songwriter and Overdrive contributor Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Womack, Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass, keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Mr. Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own news editor Matt Cole, social media coordinator Holly Young, and executive editor Alex Lockey. Until next time, keep it pro.